This is our town. This is where we work, where we play, where we learn, where our kids grow up. We can see God at work all around us, and we see so many people left to reach. Families who love this town as much as we do, but don't realize that God has something even better for them. Let's show them that we're for them.
That video shows some of the extraordinary impact you've had over the last few years as you have unleashed wave after wave of unprecedented, extravagant generosity into our community at this time of year. And I will tell you a little bit more about how we're going to do that this year in just a minute. But first, I want to tell you about what's coming up next week. It's really important, I think, that you know what we're going to be doing over the next 4 weeks, because it's going to be so relevant, not just to you, but maybe to a lot of family and friends you know who aren't in church. This would be the perfect opportunity to invite them to church. For about 2 years now, I've been wrestling through this and working on this. Next week, we are starting a brand new 4-part series called The Not So United States of America. The Not So United States of America. It will not be controversial at all, as you can imagine. No, listen, if you're new around here, you need to know we don't get into politics, so this is not going to be a political series. However, I do not have to tell you about how divisive things are in our country right now, how divided our country is, and even in our community, there's a lot of division, divisiveness that exists in our communities right now. So, what I'm going to do for the next 4 weeks is address, for those of us who are followers of Jesus, for those of us who are part of the church, how maybe we have contributed to this in some ways we should not have, and then talk about some ways that whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, some ways we could all contribute to reuniting our communities and reuniting our country, hopefully, eventually, so that the divisiveness in our country and in our communities begins to improve. It is going to be a really, really important series, I think, for us all. And if you've got friends or family members who aren't in church and they're disgusted by the divisiveness, or they're on social media talking about it, and they think, well, if that group would just straighten up, the country would be better, you know what I'm talking about. You know, if anybody who brings this up, your response should be to them, well, you should just come to church with me on Sunday, because that's what we're going to talk about, okay? So that's going to start next Sunday. Today, though, today is one of my favorite Sundays of the year. That and Easter are actually my 2 favorite Sundays every single year, because today you are getting ready once again to unleash another wave of unprecedented generosity into our communities. And for those of you who are not Christians, you're not church people, you had a bad experience, you're kind of cynical and skeptical, I get all of that. If I'd had your experiences, I would think just the way you do, so I don't fault you for that at all. But if you're new around here or you've had some of those experiences, you could not have picked a better day to come. Thank you so much for being here, because you are going to have a front row seat to what faith should look like when faith is doing what faith ought to be doing. There is nothing like the local church when the local church is working right. There's nothing worse than when the local church is working wrong. But there's nothing like the local church when it's working right. When the local church is working right, it is irresistible. And what I mean by that is this. When followers of Jesus are actually doing what followers of Jesus should be doing, and we're living the way we ought to be living, and we're being the people that we ought to be, I'm telling you, it causes everyone to lean in, not lean away. When the local church is doing and being who we ought to be, it causes people in our community who don't even believe the way we believe, who don't even attend, who may never attend, to say, you know what? I want to be a part of something like that, or even though I don't believe them and I'm not going to go there, I want them to be a part of my community. That's what it looks like to be irresistible. For people to say, that group of people makes our community so much better, even though I don't believe the way they believe, I think what they believe is kind of ridiculous, I still want them in my community because look at what they do, look at the difference they make, look at the good that they bring. That is what those of us who are part of this church should be experiencing, should be creating. That is the kind of irresistible environment that we ought to be. And the reason I say that is because that is what the first followers of Jesus did. If you begin to go back and read your history, or you kind of look at these early followers in the first century, As they began to establish churches, these were churches that even though people didn't believe what they believed, they were so glad they were a part of the community. They were so glad they showed up. When everybody else walked away, these Christians would walk right into the middle of messes, and they would love people and serve people and demonstrate compassion for people in some extraordinary ways. Not just people that agreed with them, people who were their enemies, people who thought they were crazy in some places, and in some instances, they served and loved and cared for people who wished they weren't even there, who wished this movement would go away. And it had a profound impact. And so as you read these documents that these early leaders of the churches wrote, we call it the New Testament now, but it was just a series of documents they wrote, you find this theme over and over and over again. One of them is in a document that was written by a man named James. Now, if you're not familiar with James, there are two things about James I find absolutely fascinating. First, James became the pastor of the very first church that started there in Jerusalem, which is really interesting. But the other piece that makes it even more intriguing is James was the brother of Jesus. Now just pause and think about that for a minute. Whether you believe what James wrote or not, how incredible is it that we actually have a document, a letter of James, the brother of Jesus' thoughts? If somebody came to you and said, hey, you may not believe what he wrote, but we've got some writings from someone who knew Jesus that well. I mean, that'd just be fascinating to read, wouldn't it? Well, we do. It's called James. And what's so interesting to me, and I've talked about this before, James was not a follower of Jesus until after the resurrection. Of course he wasn't. What would it take for your brother to convince you that he was God? A whole lot more than a miracle or two, right? It'd be like, no, okay, you fed those people with a few fish, nice trick. But I'm not falling for it, because, you grew, I don't know if my brother's here today, but I'm telling you, if my brother came and made that claim, he'd have to predict his own death and resurrection and pull it off for me to even listen to him. And that's how it was with James. If you begin to read through the accounts of Jesus' life, you discover that James would see what Jesus was doing. He watched these crowds begin to follow him, and James didn't buy it. James said, oh my gosh, Jesus, he's gone delusional. He's gone crazy. It's all gone to his head. The popularity is just, James just thought Jesus was out there in left field. He was like, he is not who he claims to be. You guys are falling for a trick. And then Jesus died. James saw him die on a Roman cross. He saw him put in a tomb. 3 days later, he is having a conversation, and he says, brother, I think I was wrong. I'm all in at this point. That's what it took for James to believe. And then he becomes the pastor of this first church in Jerusalem. And he writes this letter to a group of Christians. And I want to read you just a little bit of this letter, because James talks about the kind of faith that is irresistible and the kind of faith that is extraordinarily resistible. He talks about a kind of faith that is so helpful, and he talks about a kind of faith that is so harmful. I'm just going to read you a little bit of it, but I would encourage you, I hope if nothing else, this intrigues you enough that you'll go home and you will just read this little document written by the brother of Jesus. You don't even have to believe everything that's in it. You ought to just read it. It'll only take you, 10, 15 minutes. But there's some extraordinary wisdom in it, including what James says about how to have a faith that is irresistible. Let me read you a little bit of it. He says, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? What good is it, in other words, he says, if you're walking around and you're saying, I got a lot of faith, I follow Jesus, I got a lot of faith, I'm religious, I got a lot of faith, I believe in God, but you have no deeds that back that up? Implication, the answer is no good whatsoever. No good whatsoever. As a matter of fact, a person who says they believe certain things but their behaviors don't align, we call that person a hypocrite. That's what that is. And if you grew up and had a bad church experience, or at some point in your life you've had a bad experience with people who claim to follow Jesus, and they didn't behave in a way that aligned with what they said they believed, or they behaved in a way that was unloving and hurtful, you get this. You have experienced this. Most of us have run into people just like this. A person who said they had faith, but they had no deeds. And James says, listen, you got to understand, that faith is no good. As a matter of fact, he goes on, he asks this question. He says, can such faith save them? Implication, nope, not at all. James is saying, if a person claims they have faith in Jesus, but they don't have any deeds that look like Jesus, if they're not living and loving the way Jesus lived and loved, their faith is worthless. It's worthless. That's not a faith that can save. That's not a faith that changes. That's not a genuine faith. This was James' point, to which we would go, whoa, but James, when I was a kid, I went down front, or I was in a vacation Bible school, and I prayed this prayer, and I asked Jesus to forgive me and to save me, and so I'm good. James was going, no, That wasn't genuine faith, if what followed that was not you becoming more and more like Jesus and loving more and more like Jesus. You don't have a genuine faith. You have a worthless faith. The way you know whether your faith is good is by whether your behaviors begin to align more and more with who Jesus is and what he did when he was on this earth. If you've got faith, you've got no deeds, you don't have a faith that saves, you don't have a faith that helps, you don't have a faith that transforms. Your faith is worthless. And he knew we would just push back on this. I'm sure the people he's writing to, some of them pushed back and argued about it. So he gives an example. Look at what he says next. Suppose that a brother or sister, now he's saying we could talk about people who aren't a part of the church, but he says let's just make it easy. Let's just imagine that someone who's a part of your church family, suppose a brother or sister, is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? No good. No good. Somebody knocks on your door. They're part of your church family. They say, hey, I had a problem. I'm struggling. I had this happen. I just need something to eat. And James says, you look at them and go, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm praying for you. I hope you get a meal tonight. And you close your door. He says, what kind of faith do you have? You got a worthless faith. Who would do that? Who would do that? Now, this was a legitimate concern for them because of the persecution some of them encountered for following Jesus. They would find themselves in situations where they didn't have food, where they didn't have a place to stay. And it wasn't because they were lazy. It wasn't because they weren't working or managing well what they had. It was because of the persecution they experienced. And James says, what kind of faith do you have if you're not willing to reach out and love and serve and show compassion to someone who's in that situation? It's no good. It's no good. As a matter of fact, it does more harm than good. And then James makes this statement. I find this so interesting. He says, in the same way, faith by itself, if it's not accompanied by action, is dead. Faith by itself, if it's not accompanied by action, is dead. In other words, James says, there is actually no such thing as an isolated faith. Now, I'll tell you what an isolated faith looks like. A lot of us try to do this. An isolated faith is kind of like that app that you have in a folder on your phone that's on about the third scroll page over. You know what I'm talking about? And you hardly ever use it, but every now and then it comes in handy and you're like, oh, I need that app. And you have to search for it because you can't remember where you put it, but it pops up and you use it and it's awesome and you're like, I'm so grateful I have this app. And then when you're done with it, you close it and it goes back in the folder and you just forget about it until the next time you need it. Some of us, we treat our faith that way. We just put our faith in a folder somewhere, and it's in a category by itself. It's in a drawer by itself. And then every now and then when we need it, we'll pull it out on a Sunday morning, and we come and we experience a service, and it's like, oh my gosh, that just made me feel so good, and I felt close to God. That's great. And then we close it, and we put it away, and we don't bring it out until we need it again. Or we leave it there until something difficult happens, and then suddenly we need God's help. So we pull it out, and we pray. But it's just isolated. It's just something we use every now and then when we need it, and we're so grateful we have it, and then we just put it away. James would say, that's not real faith. If that's the way you approach faith, you have missed the point entirely. You've got a pretty worthless faith. Because faith by itself, faith that is isolated, is dead. It is dead. If your faith doesn't intersect with who you are and the way you handle yourself at work, if your faith doesn't intersect and make an impact on your marriage or your dating relationships, if your faith doesn't intersect and make an impact on your parenting, on the way you approach your finances, the way you manage what you have, the way you look for ways to be generous, if your faith doesn't intersect and make an impact on your relationships and the way you interact with people in your neighborhood or your friends that you encounter, or, whatever the case may be, if your faith is not an integral part of who you are, James says, not me, don't get mad at me, James says your faith is dead. That you've missed the whole point. That your entire life should be reoriented and centered around a faith that changes not what you believe only, but how you behave, the way you love, the way you treat people, the way you demonstrate compassion towards others. James says this is what faith ought to look like. And then he wraps up with this statement. He says, but someone will say, you have faith and I have deeds. In other words, James said, I know some of you are going to argue with this. Some of you are going to say, I got faith, that's enough. Some of you are going to say, I have deeds, that's good enough. James says, nope, you missed the point. He says, show me your faith without deeds. I will show you my faith by my deeds. James' point is simply this, that actions authenticate your faith. Actions authenticate your faith. Your faith is not genuine just because you say you believe something. Your faith is real. Your faith is genuine. Your faith is powerful when what you do reflects what you say you believe. When your actions authenticate your faith. And if your actions don't authenticate your faith, you should pause and reconsider whether you have faith. James says your faith is worthless if it doesn't impact your actions. It's got to be more than something isolated over here that you pull out every now and then when you need it. No, it should be an integral part of who you are and what you do every single day. So if you claim to have faith, but you're terrible to work with or to work for, if you claim to have faith, but you're miserable to live with, if you claim to have faith and you say, oh, no, I'm going on this mission trip, and everybody in the van on the way wants to throw you out of the van before you get there, you've got some faith issues. James would say, your faith is dead, your faith is worthless. How in the world can you follow someone? Now think about this. How in the world can you follow someone who on the night of his arrest sat down with his disciples and says, okay, guys, you've spent your whole life in Judaism. There's 613 laws you've been trying to follow. All of that is done. It's finished. I came to do something brand new. I'll tell you what I came to do. I'm going to give you one command. You're to center your entire life around this. I want you to love one another the way I have loved you. And oh, by the way, I'm about to show you. I'm going to give my life on a Roman cross for you. How can you claim to follow someone? How can I claim to follow someone who said, love one another the way I've loved you, and he laid his life down for us, and we can't love people that are a little difficult to love? We can't love people who don't like us. We can't love people who some might say are our enemies. How in the world can you claim to have faith and not love any better than that? James would say you got a worthless faith if you only love people who are easy to love. How in the world can we follow someone who was full of grace and truth, and yet we live our lives full of ourselves? James would say you have a worthless faith. You haven't figured it out yet, if that's who you are. Your actions have to authenticate your faith. So this is why I love this Sunday so much. I love this Sunday because as a church family, we try really hard to love people this way. We try really hard to be people who don't just believe the right things, but live and behave the way Jesus would live and behave if he were here. And we don't always get it right. As a matter of fact, we get it wrong plenty, and you're like me, you apologize and you own it and you try to do better, So we don't think we're perfect at it. But I love this Sunday because it gives us a great opportunity to practice. So if you haven't been around here, let me take just a second and give you a little backstory, a little history of this. 13 years ago when we started the church, I had a coach that was helping me try to figure out how to do all of this. And I would meet with him in Nashville once a month. And I went down there for one of the meetings. And he looked at me and he asked me this question. He said, Matt, if your church ceased to exist tomorrow, would there be anybody in your community outside of the people who are coming who would even miss you or know you were gone? And I couldn't get away from that question. I kept thinking, not only would the people in the community not know we were gone, I'm not even sure the people who are coming would miss us because we're terrible at what we're doing right now. It's like we're so far away from the answer that we want to give. And so we decided that we were going to find some organizations in our community who were doing some extraordinary work, and we were going to come alongside them and try to partner with them and help them go further faster. Because whether people believed like us or showed up and came to our church or not, we wanted to make such an impact in this community that they saw who God is through the generosity and the love that we demonstrated. That they would say, I don't believe like them, but I don't want them leaving this community. They make this such a better place. And so we started with one organization. And we decided to go a different route than a lot of churches, and this isn't being critical, but for us, we didn't want to create a food pantry and create this program and this program and this program, because there are some amazing nonprofits in our communities who are doing extraordinary work. So we said, instead of duplicating efforts, let's just find the ones who are doing great work. We don't care if they're Christian or not. If they're doing a great job, let's see how we can come alongside them and resource them and help them with volunteers and with time, but also with money. One of the things that if you're not in the nonprofit world, you may not realize, but a lot of people, it's hard sometimes for these nonprofits to raise money for some of the needs they have if those needs aren't directly providing something to a person in need. In other words, sometimes the best thing these nonprofits can have to make a bigger impact is a better office space, or it's to hire another staff person. It's to have some computers, or whatever the case may be. But sometimes it's hard to get people to give money for that. So we said, you know what? We're just going to go ask them what they need, and then we're going to provide. And so we started with one organization. And we said, okay, you want a part-time person? Let's try to provide a part-time person. You need some new computers? We'll try to provide you with some new computers. And over the years, that has just grown and grown and grown. And then about 6 years ago, we said, you know what? What if we just branded this for Calloway? And every year around the holiday season, we'll take the offering we do. We'll give away every single dime of it to these nonprofits. We vetted. We know they're doing great work. We know the money's going to be used wisely. So we thought, what if we just do an offering and then turn around and give it all away to these organizations and see what happens? They don't know it's coming. We'll just surprise them with it, but we'll try to make it a little easier for them to make a bigger impact next year. So just over the last 6 years, not even over the full 13, just over the last 6 years, in this offering alone, you have given away nearly $300,000. That's how much you've invested back into our community. Today, we will blow through that $300,000 number. And over the course of our church, it's significantly more than that we've invested into the community. But the reason we did it is because we just thought, you know what? Sometimes the best way to show someone that we are for them and God is for them is to come alongside them and to serve them well and to demonstrate no strings attached generosity, because that's what our Heavenly Father demonstrated to us. So, for the last few years, we focused on 4 causes, and I want to tell you or remind you of what those are. And then I'll tell you how you can be a part of this today, okay? There are 4 causes that these nonprofit organizations help, and we tried to keep the scope narrow. Instead of going wide and doing a little bit in a lot of places, we'd rather go deep with a few and make as big an impact as possible. So here are the 4 causes. The first one is hunger. So there are some organizations in our communities who do some incredible work, helping families, helping kids, helping seniors who have hunger issues. Now, if you're not in the middle of this, you're not aware of it. The number of kids in our communities who, when they go home on a weekend, if they don't have some food sent home with them, they won't have enough to eat till they get back to school on Monday. There are about 1,300 families in our community alone right here that get assistance with this every single month. There are senior adults who, if they don't have somebody come along and help them, they just don't have enough income to be able to have the kind of nutrition, the kind of food that they need. So we've come alongside some organizations for Calloway, for Marshall, that do this in the area, that make a difference here when it comes to the food, make a difference addressing this hunger issue, and we just try to resource them as best we can. The second issue or cause is children at risk. Again, if you're not in the middle of this, you do not understand. And if you heard the stories, they're just heartbreaking. You don't understand how many kids in Calloway and Marshall that they're in at-risk situations. In other words, they are in situations that are not healthy. They're in home situations that are, in some cases, dangerous or traumatic. And there's some organizations that come alongside them, and they just do phenomenal work at putting an advocate, an adult in their life, at the most traumatic, uncertain moment of that kid's life. They say, you know what, we're going to come alongside you. We're going to make sure you get in a healthy, safe place. But we're going to love you, and we're going to be there for you. And what I love about this organization is at the same time, they show up for the parents and they say, okay, we're going to walk with you. We want this family reunited. We'll do what we can to help you to make the changes you need to make so your family can be back together again. They do some extraordinary work. The third cause is recovery. As many of you know, some of you have dealt with addiction yourselves. A lot of you have. The rest of us, we have had family members or friends who have dealt with addiction. You know how tough that is. Whenever I meet somebody who's in recovery or somebody who has, faced this head on, my respect level for them just goes through the roof. For someone to be willing to battle an addiction and change their life is extraordinary. Not only does it change them, it changes in a lot of cases generations to come. And there's some organizations that do phenomenal jobs coming alongside men and women who need support in the middle of this. And as you know, addictions with drugs and alcohol are often at the root of a lot of the other causes, a lot of the other problems that we see in our communities. So these people do some extraordinary work. We're going to come alongside them again this year. We're going to try to help them out. And then the final cause or need is around housing. And again, you may not be aware of this, but there are a lot, especially kids, there are a lot of kids in our communities who don't have adequate housing or in many cases don't have a warm, safe bed to sleep in at night. And there's a brand new organization that's just started that's serving Calloway and Marshall and Graves, and they're addressing this problem, and they're already doing some incredible work. So I wanted you to hear from their volunteer director, Julie Morris. She's here with us. Julie, would you come on out? You guys welcome Julie to the stage, if you will.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so Julie, tell them, well, you started with a group of people, Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Tell them a little bit about the mission, about what y'all do and why you do it.
Our mission is that no child sleeps in the floor in our town, and our town is now all 3 counties. And we're just out there building beds. We utilize the community to build and to raise funds to go and build beds. We deliver them for free to the families.
Yeah, so tell them a little bit about what that looks like, what goes into it, and what it costs to do that.
Each bed, a bunk bed, because typically these families don't have enough room for anything else, but a bunk bed costs $375. That
Okay.
includes the lumber, screws, everything. The
Pillows, mattress,
everything.
yeah, they get it all, right?
They get it all. We deliver it for free. We set it up, and a lot of times the kids help.
Yeah, and you have volunteers who show up and you do these builds.
Correct.
Where they'll build a X number of beds, and then they get to go deliver these.
Typically on a Saturday, we work maybe just about 3-4 hours, and we'll build 5 to 10 beds in that time. And you don't need any skills. Anybody can do it. We have trained staff that walks you through the steps. You go home with skills as well.
Yeah. So tell them a little bit about the needs you're seeing in the community already, okay?
When we first started, we thought, oh, this would be fun. We could just build a couple of beds in our garage occasionally. When we started looking into it, the resource centers in the schools are saying anywhere from 9 to 12 a month.
9 to 12 kids a month that are needing beds.
Correct. And Child Protective Services receives anywhere from 30 to 40 new cases a month. And
Wow.
about a third of those are needing beds.
And that's just right here in Calloway, Graves, Marshall counties.
Actually, that's just in Calloway.
That's just in Calloway.
Correct.
Okay. So you're serving all 3 of those counties. Give us an example of the impact it's making. We were talking earlier about some incredible stories. So can you just share one of them?
One of the best stories is this little boy walked in and he's like 6. He's, I don't want a bed, I don't want a bed, I don't want a bed. And he gets in his bed. His mom convinced him to get in his bed. He says, I'm never getting out of my comfortable bed. Over and over, and I'm not getting out of my comfortable bed.
Yeah, you know, a lot of us take it for granted because we've never been in that situation. But it impacts not just the kids, it impacts the entire family. Can you tell them a little bit about why that's true?
Recently, a mom wrote and said that her children had slept through the night for the very first time in over 10 years.
They've been sleeping on the floor?
They had been sleeping on mats on the
Okay.
floor, and not even a mattress. A lot of times they might have a mattress. And people assume that children want to sleep on the floor. That's just not the case. They know the difference. And so they're very, very pleased. But that impacts the whole family because now the mom got to sleep through the night. And the mom is rested and able to deal with her family because she got to sleep through the night as well.
Yeah, they posted this on their Facebook page. You can follow them on Facebook if you don't. And they posted this mom had written this letter. And it made me chuckle because the mom said in the letter, I just thought my kids were terrible sleepers. And then we put them in a bed and they slept all night long. So it can impact a lot more than most of us realize because we've just always had a bed to sleep in. Can you talk to them for just a minute? If they're going, I would love to be involved with this. How do I help? What are some ways I can help? Just tell them what you need and ways they can help.
Our biggest need, of course, is funding so that we can purchase materials to buy beds. And then the way to help would be to come and volunteer to build. And one of our big goals in the future is to have a trailer so that we're mobile and out in the community doing this. And then volunteers can just show up. We post on Facebook, hey, we need volunteers today, and people show up.
So, and then we were talking backstage, they can also, if they know of a child who needs a bed, they can go to the website and refer.
Absolutely, shpbeds.org, and you do not have to, and the family can request it themselves, or you, if you know them, you can request for them.
Okay. Before you leave, you mentioned a couple of things that I want to connect the dots for them. One is this, it costs $375
Correct.
to build a bed, a bunk bed, and you're raising all the funding for all of that.
Correct.
So I know how generous you guys are. So what we did is we went ahead, first service, and we gave them a check for $2,500 to fund a whole build for them sometime on a Saturday. That's from you. You got to give the money now, but that's going to be from you. So I wanted you to know, and we were joking backstage, when I gave her the check, it was in an envelope. I didn't have her open it, and she thought I'd said we were funding a bed, $375, and she walked backstage and saw that.
Thrilled.
Yeah, she was excited about the bed, and then she realized, no, we're going to fund the whole build.
So if you want to build, your build is fine.
We got the cash. We got the cash. We're ready.
We need hands.
That's right. And they'll be up there afterwards. I'll tell you about this in a minute, but they'll be up there afterwards. You can talk to Julie or some of her team. But I have one more surprise for you, okay? Listen, so you just mentioned it. You didn't mention it first service, but we knew you need a trailer to transport all of this. And I want you to look right here on the TV. Here's your trailer. It's yours to have from all these folks. We have got it lined up to get pulled where you need it to go afterwards, and that is taken care of for you. So
You guys had already generously let us borrow one in a week, and now we have one.
now it's yours to have. So, and it's because of the generosity of these people. So,
Those are amazing.
listen, thank you so much. Would you guys thank Julie for all they're doing? Congratulations. You're welcome. So, let me tell you what I want you to do now, okay? I want you to do two things. First of all, I want you to consider serving and getting involved with some of these nonprofit organizations. For some of you, those causes I went through earlier, one of them resonates with you deeply, maybe because of your experience or the experience of a family member or a friend. Why not get involved and help out? Here's what we've done today to make it as easy for you as possible. When you leave today, as you exit on the right, over there by the cafe, just on the other side of that pipe and drape, there's a line of tables, and we have a group of organizations from our communities who are here. You can go talk to them today, learn more about what they do, learn more about the volunteer opportunities. I'll run through the list real quickly for you. Needline is up there. Needline serves our community in an extraordinary way. They serve about 1,300 families every single month, providing food assistance, other type of assistance. They are phenomenal. They are actually the very first nonprofit we partnered with back in 2006, I believe. And we have loved our partnership with them. Soup for the Soul is there. Soup for the Soul provides hot meals for people every single day. So you can stop up there and learn more about that. They've got some great volunteer opportunities. Hope in Murray. Some of you have heard us talk about our partnership with 8 Days of Hope. 8 Days of Hope is an organization that is national, that whenever there's a natural disaster, they show up with thousands of volunteers, and if it's a hurricane or flooding or tornadoes, they will help clean up and then they will help rebuild. We have a lot of people from our church who have been on and participate with 8 Days of Hope nationally. As a matter of fact, we have several who are gone right now who are serving in Florida. A lot of them have been gone all fall serving because we've had so many natural disasters. And 8 Days is fully supportive and has encouraged them to start a local chapter. So Hope in Murray is just a group of local folks who do 8 days or who have enjoyed that, who said, hey, let's create something like that also serves our local area. So if you want to get involved in that, if you love that kind of work, you should talk to the folks at Hope in Murray. They would love to have you involved. Near Town is a phenomenal organization started by a gentleman who comes to our church, has been a part of our church for a while. His name's Jeremy Rose, and they do recovery support for men, and they're going to soon, I think, be providing something for women. So he runs a recovery center right here in our community that serves this area in Marshall and Calloway and Graves, wherever these guys come from. A lot of the guys come to our church. We absolutely love having them here. They are extraordinary. So we're going to come alongside them and support them. You just heard from Julie with Sleep in Heavenly Peace. PASAC is another one of these organizations that flies under the radar, but they come along and they provide services and support for people who have experienced different sexual assault situations or traumas. and they do incredible work for our entire region. They're Murray, Paducah, all of Western Kentucky, Marshall. They're serving the entire region. And then finally, a lot of you know about Casa by the Lakes. We've been a partner with them for a while. Casa comes alongside these children who are in at-risk or dangerous situations, and they provide support for them, and they try to help the parents and to make the changes they need to make. They do incredible work. They're all going to be up there at the tables afterwards. So all you got to do when you leave is just stop and talk to them. You can figure out a way to volunteer or get plugged in. The other way you can serve that I want to tell you about is some of the folks on our team have done an incredible job creating a resource for you. Someone came to us and said, okay, you've been talking about how it's not about you, it's about the you beside you, and we know as a family or as friends we should get out there and do something and serve the people in our communities, but they said, well, we're going to be honest with you, we don't have time to come up with the ideas. So if you'd come up with ideas, then we have no excuse. And I said, deal. Okay, so a lot of you have our app. If not, you can search Journey Calloway in your app store on your phone. You can download our app. When you download it, all you have to do when you open it up is click on Connect at the bottom, and then at the very top there is an item for Callaway serving ideas. And here's what we've done. When you click on that, if you and a group of your adult friends want to do something together, there's a place for you as an adult to click, and there'll be a list of ideas. You can just pick one to do in our community. If you want to do it with your preschoolers, if you want to do it with your elementary kids, middle or high schoolers, if you got families, we've got options for you as well. So I wanted to make sure you knew about that. My point is just this. Some of you need to get involved serving in some of these ways. You can make a huge impact if you'd volunteer just a little bit of your time. Now, the other thing that I want you to do is to give, and I want you to give big so that check we gave her does not bounce. You've got to give big, okay? We want to unleash an unprecedented amount of generosity in our community again this year. Last year, you gave about $64,000 away. And I think this year we can do even better than that. Now, if you're new to this, we don't have a monetary goal. I'm not going to get up here and tell you we need to give X amount, because we used to do that and y'all would just blow the amount out of the water. So there's no point in me doing that. You're going to be incredibly generous. My only goal for this is 100% participation, okay? I want all of you to give something. I don't know what you can give. You know what you can give. I just want everybody to give something. Everybody can give something. So if you're going, well, sure enough, there's a preacher and he's out to get my money. Yes, today and today only, I'm out to get your money, okay? Because we don't keep a dime of it. We give it all away, every last bit of it. So I don't care if you're a Christian, not a Christian, you should give some money. If you are watching online, we have a lot of people who watch online every week, and we know you're out there, and you should give some money. I'll tell you how in just a minute, okay? Everybody should participate in this. So let me just make it simple for you. Here's how it's going to work. We have given you 5 different ways you can give. The first one is for those of you who are here. You can give in the service as we end. If you have cash or you have a check, you take that yellow envelope, for Callaway Christmas offering envelope you got when you came in. You put your cash or check in it. In just a minute, I'm going to dismiss you. And as you walk out, there will be guest services volunteers at the top of the stairs, one down here. You can just drop your envelope in the bucket and give that way. Or, for some of you who just give digitally, you can go to givejourney.com. You can give right there. It'll only take you about 60 seconds if you haven't set it up before. It's going to be real quick. If you have set it up before, it's real simple. Go to givejourney.com, give there, just select the For Callaway Fund. It'll ask you what fund, select For Callaway, all your money will give away. Or a lot of you give through the app, you can go give through the app, okay? Just open it up, select the For Callaway Fund, and you're good to go there. If you're here and you're going, well, I don't want to give through my phone or whatever, but I'd like to use a debit card or a credit card, we have you covered. When you leave today, you know where the suite is up there on the left as you exit? If you will look straight across from the suite on your right, there's a small pub table there, and we can process your debit or credit cards. You can give, all right? So no excuses for you. And then finally, some of you text your gift in. If you don't do this or know how to do this, I'm not going to explain to you how, okay? But for those of you who text your gift in, you can text however much you want to give to For Callaway Day. Just put an FC after the amount. All the money will go to the For Callaway Fund. So there is a way for all of you to give, including all of you who are watching online. You should do it now. Here's the thing. For far too long, the church has been known for what we're against. We want to be known for what we're for. We want everybody in our community to know that we are for them, and more importantly, God is for them. But they cannot see your heart. They can see your actions. They cannot see your heart. They can feel your money, and they can feel my money. And so Jen and I have already gone online, and we've made our gift. I want to ask you to do the same, and I want to ask you to give as big as you can give. And let's unleash another wave of no strings attached generosity into our communities. And let's show people in a very tangible way that they have a Father in heaven who cares about them and is extraordinarily generous to them. And He's been extraordinarily generous to us, and because of that generosity, we're going to be generous to them. And we're going to let our actions authenticate our faith once again. So, the way we're dismissing today is different. There is no prayer. There is no song. There is just a countdown to give and give big. Are you ready to give? That ain't going to cover that check, let me tell you. Are you ready to give? That's better. 3, 2, 1, you go give big. We'll see you next Sunday.